Welcome, everybody, and thank you
Sounds
for
great.
joining us this session. My name is Gabriela Boscio, and I'm part of the BU Sustainability team here at Boston University. Before we get started, I wanted to share a few housekeeping items. First, please keep your microphones on mute and your videos off during the presentation so that we can better hear and see our speaker. Today's agenda includes this welcome, a brief introduction about our speaker, a presentation, and then some time for questions and answers. If you have any questions, please share them in the chat and we will try to get to as many as we can after the presentation. This session is being recorded and the recording will be made available in the week after this event via the BU Sustainability YouTube page. Boston University has long valued sustainability. Today, you're going to hear about what our current projects are related to climate change and sustainability, and how we've progressed on our goals that we set forth in our climate action plan that was approved by the Board of Trustees a few years ago. To tell you all about this today, we have Dennis Carlberg. Dennis Carlberg is the Associate Vice President for Sustainability here at Boston University. He is an architect and was BU's first sustainability director back in 2009. Dennis is an adjunct assistant professor in the Department of Earth and Environment and a faculty advisor for the Earth House, which is a living learning community. Dennis began his career at Solar Energy Research Institute, conducting daylighting research to reduce building energy consumption and improve the indoor environment. Dennis also founded the Climate Resilience Committee at the Urban Land Institute, Boston, which was established to educate and motivate the Boston area real estate community to actively address climate change, sea level rise, and policy development. Dennis currently co-chairs the Boston Green Ribbon Commission Higher Ed Working Group and has been a member of several climate, energy, and zero waste technical advisory groups for the City of Boston and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. He has also served on several advisory boards at BU and the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Dennis, who is going to tell you more about all of our work at BU Sustainability. Over to you, Dennis.
Thank you, Gabriela, and thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm excited to share our progress and talk a little bit more about what we're doing here. So sustainability at Boston University is really more than a movement. It is an issue of strategic importance to the university for our curriculum, our research initiatives, and our operations. Sustainability has been a part of BU's structure and culture for over a decade. The progress details on our sustainability metrics, which I would normally go through, are lengthy. And rather than going through that, I just thought I would let you know that you can download the Sustainability Annual Report from the Sustainability website. But a couple metrics are, we have met our 2020 goal to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 25%. And we have increased our recycling rate from 3% in 2006 to 42% last year. We're proud of our progress, but I will tell you that COVID is having an impact and will for a few years. We have COVID protocols that have been put in place to make our campuses safer during the COVID-19 pandemic. Building energy consumption and waste generation are understandably increased over this time. But that said, I'd like to give you a sense of what we're doing and provide you an update of BU's progress toward the goals set forth in the university's climate action plan and approved by the Board of Trustees 2.5 years ago. As for context, in 2016, and I love this, the Board of Trustees said it was time for the university to walk the walk and asked President Brown to assemble a climate action plan task force. Dr. Brown brought 18 faculty, staff, and students together to deliver a 5-point plan. The task force was led by Professor Anthony Genados, the director of the Frederick S. Pardee Center for the Study of the Longer Range Future, and the department head for Earth and Environment. Tony was an internationally recognized climate scientist contributing to the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's report for policymakers, and national climate assessments for the United States. The task force delivered a plan at the end of 2017 with 5 high-level goals: to prepare our campuses for the impacts of climate change that can no longer be avoided, to get to net zero direct emissions by 2040 for the university's operations, to act on indirect emissions, to integrate climate change and sustainability into our educational and research missions, and to integrate the Climate Action Plan into the university's strategic plan. So I'd like to outline our progress on all of these points. The first recommendation in the Climate Action Plan was to set out to prepare our campuses for the impacts from climate change. To prepare for the flooding risk from sea level rise and storm surge, we established what we call an elevation of resilience, above which we want to locate all critical building infrastructure, our equipment, our systems, as well as our research and other critical components to how Boston University operates. We wanted to raise that above that elevation to reduce the exposure to future flooding. This map illustrates a 100-year storm today. And we've had a few of these in the last few years. So 100-year storm is a bit of a misnomer, but it is based on probabilities. This is the same storm in 2070, which is based on climate science and the consensus for what we can expect in Boston by 2070, roughly 2070, plus or minus 15 years. So here's what we're doing to prepare. We're having a vulnerability assessment that's currently underway for the medical campus. The Killishawn Center for Integrated Life Sciences and Engineering has no basement. Its mechanical and electrical equipment that would normally be located in the basement are located on the 2nd and 3rd floors. The Center for Computing and Data Sciences, which is now under construction, has set its first floor at 1.25 feet above our elevation of resilience, the one that we developed in the Climate Action Plan. Recommendation number 2. Now I'd really like to turn to how we achieve net zero direct emissions by 2040. This happens to be a construction photo from the BuWin Project from March. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But I'm only going to show 2 graphs today, but they're really central to how we think about this work, so it's important for me to walk this through. This graph represents our greenhouse gas abatement over the next 30 years. I want to sort of walk this through. So the x-axis is years, the y-axis is our greenhouse gas emissions, and you can see how over time we intend to reduce our emissions. The gray areas represent our fossil fuel-based emissions. So essentially, the intent here is to reduce demand by 31% by 2032. We need to shift from fossil fuel use to electricity for heating and cooling to enable the transition to renewable energy. We need to source renewable energy to match 100% of the university's electricity demand. And we will begin the transition of the used fleet to electric vehicles over time. The Center for Computing and Data Sciences will be the largest fossil fuel-free, carbon-free building in Boston. And it is a powerful illustration of how we're going to achieve our goals. It is one way we can meet these emissions reduction goals by creating buildings that operate carbon-free. So let me walk you through how we get to carbon-free. If we design this building to meet the pretty stringent Massachusetts Energy Code, we would still be producing 1.4 million kilograms of CO2 annually. Using strategies to aggressively reduce our energy consumption, we can reduce the energy consumption of the building by about 30%. Using geothermal, or the thermal mass of the Earth, for heating and cooling, we can eliminate the need for natural gas. Let me repeat that. We can eliminate the need for natural gas. There will be no gas line connected to this building. That is bold. and that allows us to be fossil fuel free. Switching to electricity for the source of our energy allows us to source that energy from renewables, from BuWin. That allows us to be carbon free. I love this graph. The best graph we've ever come up with, and it's pretty exciting for me. Geothermal on a dense urban campus is very challenging, especially when you need to drill 31 1,500-foot deep wells. These wells are twice as deep as the John Hancock building is high. All these wells are now complete, and the construction for the project is expected to be complete by the end of 2022. I'm pleased to report that the BuWin project is nearly complete at NG's wind farm in South Dakota. Here's a quick video to give you a flavor of the project. So why did we go to South Dakota and not New England? Because we wanted to find a project that would have the greatest impact possible on actual greenhouse gas reductions globally. Since the climate doesn't care where our emissions reductions come from, we chose a renewable project that would displace the dirtiest electricity generation possible. Of the 127 projects in the dirtiest grids in the country, this one maximized our criteria and will displace 2 to 3 times more greenhouse gas emissions than a project in New England. We will receive the RECs, the renewable energy certificates, off of this project, and we will retire them for the benefit of the planet. Here are some quick facts. There are 92 wind turbines in this project. The tip of the blades will sweep to 500 feet above the ground, and the area of the sweep of each turbine is 2.6 acres. The project is on track to begin generation by December 1st. This will match 100% of the university's electricity load. That's how it's been designed. It will generate 205 million kilowatt hours of electricity for BU a year for 15 years. It will reduce Boston University's emissions by 53%. So back to campus. We use the U.S. Green Building Council's Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design Green Building Rating System as a way to track our construction projects and make sure that we're following what we're saying we're doing. Two more projects this year have achieved LEED Gold. This past year, the DeHoo Family Alumni Center and Miles Standish Hall. This brings the total LEED certified space at Boston University to over 1.1 million square feet. And 89% of that square footage has achieved LEED Gold. On the electric vehicle front, we've completed a feasibility study for the transition of the fleet to electric and hybrid vehicles. This will happen over time. Our implementation recommendations will be finalized later this year. Goal number 3, efforts are currently underway to address emissions that are not in our direct control, but are a result of what we buy, what we waste, and how we move. We have developed a zero waste plan involving over 50 campus stakeholders, which we expect to release post-COVID. The plan addresses the entire value chain, from what we buy to what we discard and how we do that. The Climate Action Plan estimated that travel associated with Boston University represents about 25% more emissions than what we're currently accounting for our operations. Not total, but just an additional 25%. Air travel makes up about 80% of those transportation emissions. The Climate Action Plan proposed piloting strategies to encourage voluntary purchase of carbon offsets for business travel. BU Sustainability has begun to design such a pilot in collaboration with sourcing procurement, other departments, and other higher ed sustainability partners. BU is working to identify shared opportunities to leverage our engagement in this field. Embodied carbon. I love this subject. It's very esoteric though, but it's really important. Embodied carbon is really addressing the emissions associated with the sourcing of raw materials of the construction process and has a significant carbon impact. Embodied carbon in primary building materials are responsible for 28% of building sector globally, of global building sector emissions each year. And these are rarely addressed in the design process. We're working to reduce embodied carbon in our building construction now at Boston University. The structural materials for the Center for Computing and Data Sciences have been specified to reduce the embodied carbon as much as 10%. And we're working to do better than that on our next projects. Recommendation number 4. This is the exciting news. It's really begun to take hold. To integrate climate change and sustainability into our curriculum and more into our research. Boston University currently has 390 courses that include sustainability. This past January, faculty convened a workshop to further help incorporate energy, climate change, and sustainability into undergraduate students' education. Approximately 60 faculty and staff from across disciplines gathered to explore how to integrate sustainability into classrooms and across majors. The BU Hub, in its cross-college challenge this term, is including a zero waste project. As called for in the Climate Action Plan, the university launched a Campus Climate Lab last semester. This is led by Professor Hutera in collaboration with BU Research and BU Sustainability. This initiative uses BU campuses as living laboratories to advance sustainability practices and implement the Climate Action Plan. The Campus Climate Lab funds students to support student research of their design as well as increase interdisciplinary collaboration among students, faculty, and staff. As I mentioned, we launched the lab earlier this year with great results. Approaching the first we now want to supercharge these student efforts. So we have created the Anthony Genados Climate Action Prize, a financial award to the student or team of students whose research most successfully advances climate action each year at BU and beyond through the Campus Climate Lab. Pancreatic cancer took Tony from us a year ago, August. Approaching the first anniversary, we began fundraising for the Anthony Genados Climate Action Prize to honor Tony's legacy, his contributions to science, climate action, and the university. We hope to raise $100,000 to create an endowed fund to support the prize for the longer term. With generous contributions from Tony's family and some friends, we're nearly a third of the way of achieving that goal. If you're interested in contributing, please use the URL on the screen. Recommendation number 5, integrate the Climate Action Plan into the university's strategic plan. Over the last 2 years, faculty, staff, and students from across the university have worked to build a strategic plan that establishes a clear vision for Boston University. As a result of this work, the Board of Trustees approved the plan with 5 strategic priorities for BU over the next 10 years. Sustainability is one of the new initiatives that's included in the plan. We are now developing the details for the implementation of the strategic plan. Let me say a few words about BU's leadership. In December, at the groundbreaking for the Center for Computing and Data Sciences, Mayor Walsh talked about how Boston University is a climate leader, and the center is a symbol for climate leadership. He sees the center as a leading example of sustainable design and an important solution for helping the city meet its goals to be carbon-free by 2050. A week after the groundbreaking, Mayor Walsh signed an executive order that all new municipal buildings will be carbon-free. We are extremely fortunate to be part of a city with such strong climate leadership. With that, I'd love to hear some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. So we've got a couple of questions in the chat, and for those of you who may have questions and haven't shared any yet, please feel free to add those in here. Just to start with, I know this is something that we don't fully know the answer to just yet, but one of our participants was wondering how COVID has impacted our goals and our climate action plan. Is there anything you'd like to add about that?
Oh, certainly. I think it's a challenge. It's clearly a challenge. We've increased our air change rates significantly. We're running our HVAC systems much longer throughout the day, and we've increased the filter capacity in the filters, which increases the amount of energy because you have to push harder to get that air through those filters. So we expect there to be an increase in energy consumption over the next couple of years. We don't yet know how much of an impact that will have, but the intent is to figure out how to catch up when we come on the other side of this. It will be a challenge. It's significantly impacting us today, and it's not just the energy, it's the waste we generate with the grab-and-go systems that we're using in the dining halls to increase safety. That's creating more waste. And this is a challenge that we're wrestling with, and everybody else is wrestling with the same challenges.
Thank you, Dennis. Another question that we have is regarding, I guess, the land that BU owns. The question reads, BU has the benefit of land area. What is envisioned for the campus/land, not the buildings, to support BU's climate action plan?
Great question. I think there are a number of ways we're thinking about this. Frankly, it's a pretty dense urban campus, so there's not a lot of BU land that's actually owned. A lot of it is city streets. A lot of what we think of the campus is city streets. But in the campus, in the climate action plan, we've looked at ways to increase permeability. So for storm runoff, allow that to more naturally find its way into the ground as opposed to putting it into more pipes and dealing with stormwater that way. So I think, and the other challenge is, we're interested in putting solar up on our buildings, and one thing that people think about are putting it up on parking lots, and our parking lots are getting fewer and fewer because we're putting buildings on those parking lots. So that's not an option. We are looking at a number of buildings. We're doing a feasibility study now to put solar on campus. But I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. Another question we have is regarding student participation in the implementation of the climate action plan. The question says, will there be any volunteer, internship, or employment options for BU students focused on supporting BU's climate action plan?
Well, there are many opportunities. Certainly, the BU Sustainability Office has a handful of students, and they're central to how we work. They're dedicated students who are responsible for serious work that we do for implementing the plan. So that's one option. There's a resident sustainability leaders group that Gabriela manages in the dorms. And that program is, I think, an exciting new outcome of the climate action plan. And then there's the Campus Climate Lab, which is funding students for their time and they put budgets together, working with faculty. They have to pair up with a faculty member, and we go through an approval process, a two-step approval process. First step is a very simple idea phase, a few hundred words explaining what you want to do and what faculty you're thinking you might work with. But you don't have to have the faculty identified yet. We can help make those connections. And then we move forward with a handful of those projects, and we fund those students and for their research, and it's tied to the climate action plan. And then there's a partnership we have with Innovate at BU, and you know, there's seed funding there for ideas. So there are lots of great opportunities, I feel, for students, and I think that's an important part of our climate action plan, and that's been an important part of our DNA from the beginning.
I would add, Dennis, that we also have a lot of clubs, student clubs on campus that focus on sustainability, the environment, and lots of different aspects of that. And those groups do a lot of important work as well. And that's another avenue for students to get involved on campus. Moreover, I think you may not have talked too much about this when you were talking about the climate action plan, but correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the reason why we even have a climate action today is student involvement and student movements on campus demanding climate action and sustainability. So absolutely, I mean, it was an ongoing effort by students and faculty to get us more involved with walking the walk, and that's what went to the Board of Trustees, and from them we got the goal to get it done. So students are a huge part of this. Yep. Another question we have, so we have a couple questions about the wind farm. One of them is, so the wind farm in South Dakota, what is the annual maintenance cost for these systems? Where are the efficiencies of each pole monitored? Okay, love the question. Gabriela, stop me if I'm getting too much into the weeds, okay? So what our deal with the project in South Dakota, it's a power purchase agreement. This is a typical kind of agreement that a lot of people have for solar panels on their roofs. It's a very straightforward process. Essentially, we're buying the power off of the project. We're not owning the project. That is owned by ENGIE, which is a large energy company, international energy company. And so we're buying the power for 15 years. By our contract with them, they were able to get the project financed and move forward with it. So we're not responsible for those maintenance costs. That's their responsibility. That's built into our cost. So hopefully that answers the question. But while I'm talking about BU Wind, I think it's important to mention, which I didn't mention earlier, is our contract with ENGIE includes opportunities for faculty and students. There is a trip to the site once a year for the BU community, which is intended to be much more than just a trip. We're building curriculum around that trip, working with Michael Gebelber, Professor Gebelber in engineering, to develop a meaningful experience as a directed study. We were going to go out to the site in May until COVID hit. And so now we're beginning to plan what happens after we can start to travel again. But the intention is to bring a group of students there annually for this directed study. And also we're getting data off of the project, so faculty and students can understand what the generation is off of all of the wind turbines, and be able to do some real interesting analysis, I hope, and hopefully move technology forward. So I think it's a really exciting opportunity that we've built into our contract with ENGIE. Awesome, thank you, Dennis.
Hopefully that answered the question.
Yes, if you feel like any of the questions that we've tackled have not been fully answered, please let us know through the chat. I was going to suggest, Dennis, since I don't think you're going to show any more slides, do you want to stop screen sharing so we can see your face a little bigger?
Oh, certainly. Wow, got a lot of people. Cool.
Yeah. So another question we have here, maybe this is a quick one, is around native plants on campus. Do we have any kind of policies or plans around like including more native plants or anything to address that?
That's a good question. I would say that it's not been a focus, honestly. I mean, certainly there are native plants, but there's a lot of non-native plants. You know, I think let me say that there's one interesting campus climate lab project which looked at and getting into weeds quickly, but I'll try not to. I mean, it's exciting stuff. But this is how the campus climate lab can actually change how our practices on campus. One thing that we discovered, student discovered working with Professor Gutera, is the carbon flux, which is the amount of emissions that come from decaying materials, in this case, decaying materials on campus in the planting beds, have a very significant carbon impact, and which diminishes our progress if you start to look at that. So this is one of the things we will be looking at. What is the actual uptake from the plants on campus versus what the emissions associated with, so that off-gassing of the methane from the decaying materials actually is greater impact than the absorption of CO2 into the tree and plant material on campus. So we're looking at how to change our landscaping practices to change that dynamic. So this is a real action that has come out of the Climate Action Plan, or the Campus Climate Lab.
Thank you, Dennis. So moving into a related topic, has BU ever considered doing a living building? We talked a lot about infrastructure and about buildings. Is that something that has been considered?
Love the question. It certainly, well, to cut to the chase, we've talked about it on a new project potentially, but I don't want to make that sound like that's what the plan is. Living building challenge is an important criteria that is I think much higher hurdle than LEED provides. But it's a great system, and we did suggest in the Climate Action Plan that we explore living building challenge when we have an opportunity. So it is coming up in conversations with new projects.
Awesome. So moving into some different topics here, we have a question about food. So asking sort of, I guess, about our approach to food. The question says, how about farming and food production, rooftop gardens, vertical farming, all possible with limited land? So the question is around how have we considered food production on campus, but I think also could be tied into what are the sustainability aspects of the way we approach food at BU.
I think that's a great question. We in fact have looked at opportunities, and we so far have not found a cost-effective way to do it. We've looked at freight farms. If people are familiar with freight farms, essentially it's a really cool system. In fact, some BU grads have gone to work there. But freight farms provides hydroponic growing in freight containers, and we looked very seriously at how to do this on campus, and where we could locate them. We identified sites near each of the dining halls, and we were not able to make it even come close to penciling out. And we have to do this in a cost-effective way, otherwise we have to raise costs, and we have a fixed amount of money to work with. So that said, we have looked at using the courtyard at Warren Towers, which is an underutilized space, which anybody that's familiar with Warren knows exactly what I'm talking about. There's a fair amount of space that we could use there for growing food for the dining hall at Warren. We'd love to do that. When we got started moving on that, COVID hit, and it's definitely not on the front burner right now. But as soon as we get past COVID and we start thinking about what we begin to move forward, that's certainly on our list. We have a lot on our list, obviously, when we get on the other side of COVID.
Thank you, Dennis. And I would add to that we have a really great partnership with dining services, and they do a lot to incorporate sustainability into the way that they operate, including a lot of local and regional purchasing of food. And you can learn more about what are the different aspects of sustainability that dining services is considering through their report, which they also have a sustainability annual report. So I might try to find the link and put that in the chat for you as well.
Thanks for that ad, Gabriela.
Absolutely. Another question we have here is about whether BU Sustainability plans to work with departments like the new Center for Anti-Racist Research to further address environmental disparities.
I certainly hope so. We've been in touch. I think they're trying to get their feet under themselves and get their program put in place. But I certainly hope there are opportunities there, and we'll see where that goes. I will say in the strategic plan, we've talked about the connections between BU Sustainability and the Center for Anti-Racist Research, and I feel like it's an important connection. So I'll leave it there because we really haven't developed that any further.
Thank you, Dennis. And I would add that for any participants here or any students who are interested in the topic of environmental justice, this year we have been providing some events around that topic, different panels focusing on different aspects of environmental justice. And there are two coming up, one in November and one in December. We don't have the dates for those yet, but the focus areas will be food in November and student leadership in December. So stay tuned and follow us on social media in order to stay up to date on what we are offering. Another question that we have here, I think I might actually take, Dennis, if you don't mind, and it's
go right ahead.
So my role in the team is engagement. So I work with students a lot. I work on events like this one and a number of different things. And this question says, can dorms and floors on dorms be tasked with coming up with sustainability solutions? Could there be a contest as part of student life? And I just wanted to take a moment to share that we have an app for sustainability here at Boston University, at Sustainability at BU app. And if you search sustainability, like at symbol BU in the App Store or in the Google Store, you will find it. And it looks like that. That's great. And that is a medium that we use for doing competitions and challenges at different levels, from dorm levels to cross university to student clubs to departments. So that is a platform that we use to tap into that competition and that creative aspect. And the program that Dennis mentioned, the Resident Sustainability Leaders, is a way to also tap into sustainability solutions at the dorm level. So I just wanted to add that. I don't know if you want to add anything more to what I said, Dennis.
I think that's fantastic, Gabriela. I think what you're doing is so important to sustainability at Boston University. It's core to what we're doing, and I really hope students get really engaged with what's happening, what you're doing. I will say that the Resident Sustainability Leader Program came out of the Climate Action Plan. It's part of an initiative that the university is very much behind now. And we're making, I think, very good progress on engaging our community, and we need our community to be engaged with us. So thank you for your work, Gabriela.
I'm very happy to be part of this team. So I have a question for you. Dennis, what current projects are you most excited about?
Honestly, I'm most excited about integrating the Climate Action Plan and sustainability into the university's strategic plan. That is, I mean, it sounds kind of wonky, but the fact of the matter is when it's in the plan, it will get done. As in the Climate Action Plan, it's in the Climate Action Plan and we're doing it. I'm not getting asked, why do we have to do this? I'm getting asked, how do we get this done? From everybody on campus, from the president to the students. So it's so important to have it integrated into the plan. That said, I think, you know, the two projects I've talked about the most here today is BuWin. I'm so excited about that. And the fact of the matter is, I was on a call yesterday with Engie. 18 of the 92 wind turbines are already generating power and putting it on the grid. So it's happening, and that's exciting. And then the fact of, you know, let me tell a story that I feel is very illustrative to the Climate Action Plan actually taking hold. The Center for Computing and Data Sciences was in design back in 2015 and in 16, but it was put in the drawer. They didn't have the funding to move forward with it. The program wasn't quite nailed down. After the Climate Action Plan, that was designed to be LEED Gold, but not carbon-free, not fossil fuel-free, just very energy efficient, good design, which is what we do and what we were doing then. After the Climate Action Plan, when the team was reassembled to move forward with the project and do some redesign and finalizing the design and moving it forward, the team was told by senior leadership at Boston University that they wanted a fossil fuel-free building. And the team was quite capable, and they were very excited about that, but this was a new charge that that was added to their charge previously. And it's just exciting to see that the university is totally behind what we're saying we're doing. The challenges are going to, honestly, the challenges are going to be around COVID and how we make up for the slippage we're going to see here. I know there's going to be slippage. I don't know what it's going to be, how much it will be, how long it will be, but it's going to take a lot of work to get us back on track after COVID is over. So did I answer your question at all?
I think so, yeah. And that brings me to perhaps another related question that I think you've started to address, which is, have you seen a difference in interest and attitudes from when you started working on this at BU to now?
Oh, totally. Totally. I think when I started, people didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. I mean, certainly there were some goals. There were general goals, not anything specific, but, you know, it was all about energy efficiency and recycling. And, you know, with that, I brought a lot of, well, essentially what I did at the time was align our mission with what is generally understood in the industry. The Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Ed has a program similar to what I talked about with LEED, but it's kind of like LEED for campuses. It's called STARS. And there are essentially everything from operations to curriculum to research and governance, and all of those things are sort of wrapped into this certification system. So I took that framework and I applied that to BU, and you know, we had a sustainability committee at the time to help kind of identify the priorities. And it was through this lens we were able to really build the priority set. And now with the Climate Action Plan, you know, it's Bob Brown asking me how we're doing on this or that. And that's a very different place than 10 years ago.
Thank you, Dennis. It looks like our questions have kind of stopped coming in, and we're getting close to time to end. So if anyone has any final questions they want to ask, please share them in the chat now. Otherwise, we will start wrapping up. I will say that if you liked what you heard and you want to check out more events from BU Sustainability or learn more about what we're doing, you should definitely follow us on our various platforms. And our colleague Erica Madison, who has been adding information in the chat, is the person leading the charge on all of our communications and does a really amazing job. So please follow us. And Dennis, I don't know if you have any closing remarks or closing thoughts to share with our participants here today.
Sure. I think there are two things that are really central and important to what we do that allow us to actually move forward on these initiatives. One is a great team. Gabriela is, you know, working on our engagement and really kind of making a big difference, I think, on campus. And that's an important part of what we do. As Gabriela mentioned, Erica is responsible for our communications and building a stronger communications system, which is critical to what we do and how we engage our community. Lisa Tornator is our sustainability director. She's very focused on what we're doing on campus and those initiatives that are on campus. And then Stephen Ellis, our data manager, is responsible for keeping us honest about what we're doing and you know, just making sure we know how we're doing across the entire sustainability spectrum of metrics. He's responsible for getting our STARS reports in annually, which is the foundation of our annual report. Really important team members here. And then Katie Robbins is our zero waste manager. She led the charge in developing that zero waste plan. And, you know, we're committed to getting these things done. We also have an amazing team of interns, which I mentioned earlier. They've been the backbone for what we do for so many years. And it is so rewarding to see, and I see some names from former interns on the screen here, so I'm excited for that. The fact of the matter is, especially early on when we didn't have much of an office, it was just me for a while, bringing interns on to actually get serious work done is, you know, it gives value to them, it gives them a launching pad for their careers, and it gets things done for BU. So it's such a great place to work because we have so many great people to work with. And the departments we're working with across the university, there's so much support from the entire university here. This is an important initiative. As I mentioned at the start, this is of strategic importance to the university, and having as many people involved in our process is really critical to how we move forward effectively. So I just want to thank everybody for the great work everybody's been doing, and for joining us today. I think it's exciting to see what we're doing. It's, you know, I tell everybody this, I have the best job in the world. I just have a great team, and I have great people to work with and collaborate with on campus and off campus. There's a lot of great stuff going on. It's exciting. I'll stop talking because I could wax on for that for a while.
Thank you, Dennis. Those are beautiful closing words. I want to thank everybody again for joining us today and remind you that we did record this. So if you want to watch it again or share it with someone, it will be available online on our YouTube platform. Thank you so much for giving your time this morning to learning more about what we're doing and sharing your questions with us. We hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody.